we noticed that something was happening to Ava, we never even considered that it would be bullying, purely because you just don't think that 6-year-olds have the ability to know how to bully. You know, we've got a 5-year-old and we couldn't even imagine her having that ability. So she would come home from school, she was angry, she didn't want to speak to anybody. And I kept going to the school saying, you know, something is happening. And they kept saying, there's nothing happening. She's absolutely fine. She's just an unhappy child, basically. She started year 2. She'd been in there for 2 weeks and she came out one day and she just fell to the floor. And she told us, you know, this had been going on for years, and she hated being at school. She was begging us to take her out. She just unloaded this weight that had been burying her. I went straight to the school the morning after. I found the deputy head on the school gates and told her I didn't even want to send her into school, told her what had happened. She took Ava and asked there was 2 little girls. She asked these little girls if what Ava was saying was true. They said, yes, everything's true. We did do that to Ava. They then spoke to the little girls and said, right, don't do it anymore. They didn't even contact the parents. And their response to me was they felt like Ava had taken it too seriously. And they said this statement in front of Ava. So Ava just shut down. And that was it. She just saw it as, you know, nobody cares. And we got her out of that school immediately. Her new school have been just fantastic. So about 8 months went by and we again noticed Ava had become very withdrawn. She wasn't really speaking to anybody. We'd got, you know, 2 other children in the house that was perfectly happy, doing well at school, and Ava just seemed to carry this dark cloud with her all the time. Everything was very negative. We would walk down the street and she would go, that man just said I'm ugly. And we would be just completely at a loss. Like, he never said that. He never said a word. He just walked past us. We would go to the supermarket and she'd say, that man wants to kill me. And we'd be like, well, how do you know that? And she'd go, because I know. Then the really strange stuff started happening. We would find her sitting in corners, banging her head like this. We would hear her talking to somebody all the time. And then we quickly realised that she was talking to somebody in her head. We would see her, we would ask her a question and she would consult the person in her head before she answered this question. We tried everything. In the space of 9 days, I'd seen 3 GPs, I'd phoned 111, we contacted private psychiatrists, we contacted everybody you could ever imagine. And I just sat there and I remember thinking, we are on our own. We are just on our own. No one's going to help us. We was drowning. We was drowning in it. We became very secluded. I remember I had friends that kept inviting me on nights out, and the thought of me being on a night out and getting a phone call that Ava had done something to herself was crippling. I couldn't bear the thought of it. So, you know, my friends very quickly got sick of it, and one of my friends made a comment that stuck with me for a long time, and she said, people are going to give up on you. And I sat on the floor for hours and hours and hours and cried about that comment, because I thought, people already have given up on us and we haven't even told you why we're like this. You know, people was just dropping left, right and centre, purely because they just didn't understand what was happening, and we didn't understand it ourselves, so we didn't know how to tell these people, you know, we are drowning in this situation. We was scared that people was going to start questioning our parenting. I was particularly scared about that. I thought people was going to start, you know, questioning whether we're, you know, looking after her, how is she hurting herself, if she's under our care, if we're such good parents, how is this happening? And it terrified me, because I knew we was trying to do everything we could, but nobody would help us. Somehow we ended up at a parents' evening at school, and the teacher was talking to me about this child. I just kept thinking, this is not my child. she was saying she's doing really well in English and she's quite friendly. She is very shy, and I just had an absolute breakdown, and I just said, this is not the child we are living with. You know, she really helped us. She got us in touch with a family support worker from the school, and this person changed our life. And all the doctors, all the nurses, the psychiatric teams that we saw, and it was a family support worker that helped us. You know, the most unlikely source that you think would be the last point of call, she changed our life. She really did. She forced people to pay attention to what was happening. Eventually, it got to the point where she started seeing a cognitive behavioural therapist, and that was when the massive turning point came. And he reminded us that we are her parents, and he said, I will take care of her brain, but you have to be her parents. And that's when we took back a little bit of control, and we started being her parents again. We started, you know, making her remember that actually we are in control of this situation, and we are going to beat this together, and we are going to make sure that you get better, but you also have to acknowledge that you are our child, and we are going to make the decisions from here on out. And things just started to get better, but they very much put it down to PTSD and the fact that her brain just couldn't, they explain it better than I do, her brain just couldn't cope with the trauma of the constant negativity, the constant being put down, and it just sort of imploded on itself, and it's only feeding her as much information as it thinks she can handle at the moment, which we're quite glad about, because as much as she hears us talking about it, it is just a story to her. You know, she doesn't have the memory of it, she just sort of hears the dialogue of it, not the actual the feeling of it. We knew that there was still, you know, our child in there, and other people just couldn't see it. They just saw this dark entity of some sort, and they just didn't want to help us. They didn't want to acknowledge it. We had people very close to us that, like I say, would avoid us because they just didn't understand it. You know, we never thought that we would have a happy child again. We couldn't see that happening for such a long time. And sometimes we just look at her playing or laughing with her friends, and we just think, God, there was a time she went months without smiling. You know, there was times we went months without smiling. We just can't believe that we have our happy child back again. You know, it was a long road, but we got there, didn't we? Yeah. Wow. And we're very, very proud of her.